All right, folks, our next presenter is David Patrick. He has 30 years of experience developing database applications, is now a 4-time MVP. You gotta update your bio there. You still have 3. And he runs multiple user groups. And with that, Dave, take it away.
Great, thanks.
Yep.
So welcome everyone. This is my talk, Intro to CDS. Well, wait a minute, Intro to DataFlex Pro. Microsoft announced the name change the other day. So Intro to DataFlex Pro inside of what used to be known as Microsoft Flow, but is now known as Power Automate. So as I was introduced, my name's Dave Patrick. I'm a certified trainer, solution developer, solutions expert. I'm starting to forget what all the letters stand for. MVP, that's a good one, 4 times, so I'm excited about that. The other one's just me, I take a lot of tests, but the MVP is an actual award for all the community stuff that I do, that a lot of the other folks that are part of this do, and so we're all really proud of that one. I've been doing SharePoint since it came out in beta back in 2000. So for anyone that's been doing it that long, you might remember the Tahoe code name that Microsoft gave it, and 2001 suffered through 2003, 2007. Well, actually 2007 was a breath of fresh air, and now what are we on? 2019, SharePoint Online. I'm still doing a lot of 2013. I do on premises. I work for the U.S. Army. I'm a DoD contractor over at Aberdeen Proving Ground. My technical title is called a SME, subject matter expert. That's a fancy way of them putting a lot of different hats on me. I do administration, farm administration. I do Office 365 administration. I do a lot of development. That's really my main focus is development. I'm an old C#, ASP.NET SQL Server guy, but I do a lot of SharePoint development, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and I do a lot of training. So I wear all those hats. So that's what they call me, a SME. There's my company, DSA Inc. We got a lot of positions open. We do a lot of different stuff. If anyone interested, we even have some positions that's opened up in Hawaii. So if anyone's interested in moving out to Hawaii, I know I am. Check out our site, check out our career openings, and maybe you'll get a chance to be shipped out there. I also run several different user groups. I have one focused on cybersecurity called MACE-Me. I have another one called stands for Mid-Atlantic Cybersecurity Experts. I have another one called Baltimore Cloud. We focus on Azure and other cloud technologies, but the one I like to highlight, especially in these kind of sessions, is MAD SharePoint. And it stands for officially Mid-Atlantic Developers, but it's sometimes SharePoint delights us and we're mad about it. Sometimes it frustrates us and we're mad at it. So hence the name MAD SharePoint. Please check us out. We actually have a user group, an online virtual meeting. Because of the pandemic, we're all online now. Next week, we're going to look at security in SharePoint, which is an often misunderstood subject. So that'll be exciting. Check it out. Go to madsharepoint.com and I'll be talking about SharePoint and security. You can also tweet me. I'm on Twitter. I'm a big Twitter guy, so feel free to follow me on Twitter and tweet at me. So thanks to the folks that put this together. This is great. Tri-State Office 365 user group, Soho Dragon, the tech platform. Wouldn't be possible without them. I really appreciate this. Is a unique, we're used to doing SharePoint Saturdays in Philly. Now we're M365 Philly virtual, and it's not Saturday. Last time I looked, I had to tell my work I was taking a long lunch. So it's Thursday. So, but we've grown up. We're virtual. We can do things like that. So it's really exciting. And thanks to those guys for putting this together. Make sure you give us your feedback. We've got speaker feedback on the left, event feedback on the right. So luckily, a lot of times at some of these events, you get feedback like the room was cold. So if the room's cold, I'm not sure what we can do about that. And also, I hope that's a good thing because it's really hot in a lot of places. So, but yeah, go out to those. What we usually do is just take our phone and point them at those barcodes, and it'll read the URL. But if for some reason your phone's not picking it up, you got the actual URLs underneath. So either one of those will work. We really appreciate your feedback. All right. So what's my talk about? I want to know what is CDS, also now known as DataFlex Pro. Why on earth would I want to use it, and how do I use it with Flow in Power Automate, right? So this talk originally I did as part of the Virtual Flow online conference a couple of years ago. So we don't do a lot of intro to Flow. I assume a certain knowledge in Flow, but if anyone has questions at the end about Flow in particular, we can also. But it is beginning. A very intro, so we'll walk through creating a flow from the ground up. So let's start with this common data service, formerly known as CDS. Now we're calling it Microsoft DataFlex Pro, and they put an they put an article out there on the Power platform site Microsoft did that explained a little bit. It's a lot of, I don't want to say marketing, but it's a lot of high-level information about what Microsoft DataFlex Pro can do for you. So it is really good, and you should check it out. Notice the URL is still Common Data Service. I found this article. There's a few articles that are now starting to trickle out. So Forever Forward put out a nice little article that kind of sums it up nicely. So what we used to have as CDS, now known as DataFlex Pro, that's for the enterprise level. You've got licensing involved. There's different ways you can pay for it, and it's for if you're using Dynamics. That's kind of where it came out of. It also integrates nicely with Power Apps and Flow. The new capability that they introduced, we used to call this CDS Lite, is now called DataFlex. And this is no additional licensing. This is included with your Microsoft 365 subscriptions and specifically targeted towards building apps using Microsoft Teams. So we're really excited about that. Again, it was announced just a couple of days ago, so we don't have, I don't do a lot of that in this session, but look for that coming up because it's exciting new capability to be able to easily, for that sort of citizen developer or power user to go in there and create applications using this new data source right in Teams. So we're all excited about that. So back to DataFlex Pro, aka Common Data Service. What is it? It lets you securely store and manage data that's used by your business applications. It's a set of entities. That's a fancy word for tables, really. It stores our records just like a table gets stored in a database. So what's interesting about this is that because it's common, it's in one spot, it's hosted in the cloud, and there's one place where everyone's putting everything, you get that single version of the truth, which is difficult sometimes when you have lots of different data stores. I use SharePoint as a data store a lot, and there might be a list of accounts in one site, and then there's a list of those same accounts in another site, and all of a sudden they're out of sync because someone updated one but not the other. By putting it all in one place, and that's what we see down here, you've got a common set of data that Power Apps can access. That if we put the accounts entity in here, right, accounts, and spell accounts real quick, then Flow can access it. You're not worried that Power BI can access it. You're not worried about having multiple sets of that entity. So it really is striving to have that one version of the truth using this common data service. Here's an example of what it looks like. So I went out there to Power Apps, and we're going to do a demo of this in a second. But I'm a big hands-on, feel it, touch it, see it. What does it look like? You can tell me what it is all day, but unless I can click on it and start taking it apart, I won't really understand what it is. That's what we're looking at here. This is, I went to Power Apps, I clicked on the left-hand side under Data, I clicked Entities, and now it's showing me these are my entities. I've got an account entity that stores all my account information, an activity. I've got other ones, addresses. You notice that some are standard, some are managed. You can have custom entities. You can create up here your own entity. So I had a class that we at the University of Maryland where I teach as an adjunct professor, and we were talking about metadata. And I said, well, let's go in here and let's create a new entity for your pets. So we went in there and we created a pet entity, and it had a name, and then it had a type because some people had cats, some people had dogs. So it really, and then we went through the exercise of what kind of metadata did we need to store. So if you click on any of these entities, you'll start getting into the metadata or the columns. What is metadata? I should back up. Data about data. So if I have, in this example, an account, maybe it's the the Johnson account that we're trying to sell paper to, it's going to have a name. And it's going to, in this case, it's going to be the primary field. So that's what we're using to identify that account. It's got to be unique. It might have an account number. It might have a rating. Maybe the Johnson account is, 10 stars. Maybe the Smith account only is 5 stars. But all of these columns, all of these fields, there's lots of different terminology that you can use for these. But these are really, it's metadata. And you can have direct metadata, and then you can have associated, right? So these addresses looks like that's being looked up from the address entity, right? An account is related. An account can have one or more addresses. So in this case, we have one address. So what I love about this is now I really understand what the Common Data Service does for me. I can actually go in here to Power Apps or Flow, click on the data, click on the entities, and start working with different entities, create my own entities. If I want to, during the demo, I'll show you how you can actually look at the data. There's a couple different ways you can go in here and actually see the data. And what I'm using, by the way, is a Office 365 developer account, developer tenant. And I will talk more about how to sign up for that. It's free, no credit card. I'm a little bit stingy. Some people call me frugal. I love all these resources that Microsoft makes available to the developers who are trying to learn some of this. And I use that word developer loosely. It doesn't mean a coder. It's anyone that's trying to build solutions, whether you're writing code or you're doing low code or no code development. So any of these developers can go out there and sign up for an Office 365 development account and get access to what we're looking at here, this screen right here. And you can get the data populated. So they actually, there's those checkboxes. There's sample data, load some sample data, bam. So you're not just staring at a blank screen. I think having that sample data really helps to understand things. So why would we use this? I kind of alluded to this already. It puts the data in one spot, makes it easier to manage both the data itself and the metadata, the data about the data. Makes it, because it's in one spot, it's easier to secure. So you can do role-based security. It allows you to access your Dynamics. So if you're already using Microsoft Dynamics, it's using the common data service, and so you're already plugged in and you're already integrated. I love that word integrated. People always say, what kind of integration does it have? It just means it works with it already. It knows about the data. So an account in Dynamics 365 is already in use. If you're in Dynamics 365 and you're adding an account, a customer, whatever, it's going to use that common data service. And if I want to go in and report on it, it's that same entity that we're talking about. Rich metadata, right? So we saw that earlier, the different data types and relationships. If I back up real quick, you can see here there's text, there's multi-lines, there's options, floating point. So all sorts of different, just like you would in a regular SQL Server database or any other kind of, database, you want to have different data. You don't want everything to be just a string. I teach a class, Intro to Databases, and that first time I have my students turn in, I say, design a table, I give them a document. Here's a purchase order. Now design a table to store that data. Inevitably, the fields that they design are all short text. And I have to kind of, give them that sort of aha moment to say, no, really, if it's a, dollar amount, that should be currency. If it's, a zip code, maybe it could be, just 5 characters. So having that rich data type choosing is valuable, and the Common Data Service allows us to have that. What else does it do for us? Logic and validation. So you can define calculated fields. Maybe you're storing first name and last name, and you want to calculate full name. Maybe concatenate the middle initial in there with some spaces, whatever you want to do. You can define business rules. So things like account can't go below a certain rating, or otherwise we got to go review it. So if they get, if they haven't paid their bills in so a certain amount of time, the rating goes down, and that triggers. Maybe I have a flow that triggers an email to someone. Workflows. Business process flows, to do different kind of flows that you can associate with your entities to make sure the data is both valid and accurate and up to date. And that's data quality. That's I love when they say, do you have quality data? Well, what does that mean? It means it's accurate and up to date. And there's a bunch of productivity tools. This last one here talks about all the add-ins, and we're going to look at one of those in Microsoft Excel the way we'll access it was automatically included in Microsoft Excel to allow you to easily edit your data and then push it back to the Common Data Service. Now in Flow, so for those of you who may not know Flow, I'll bring up Flow real quick just to show you. So this is, right, if I go to Flow, and I say Flow, I should be saying Power Automate. We have flows inside of Power Automate. So if I went to flow.microsoft.com, because power.automate.microsoft.com may be too much to type. If I go to flow.microsoft.com, this is Flow, right? And here's where I can do, I can define different workflows. And you can see I was playing with it earlier. I had a couple of it. This is a test tenant, so I don't have a lot here, but you can create a flow based on a template. So maybe you need to send a reminder or have an approval start when a new item gets added somewhere. You can see there's different data sources that each of these templates are associated with, so you don't have to start from a blank slate. So Flow allows you to add a lot of that automation in, and hence the name Power Automate, in your business apps, in Microsoft Dynamics, in Power Apps, in SharePoint. So it's a really great tool. It's available through the web browser. So I've got some students that use a Mac. They can get to it and they can create flows. It's been really, really popular. Inside of Flow, notice there's a data icon. on the left-hand navigation, and then under that is entities. That's access to that common data service entities that I mentioned. So there they are, and there's that account one that I was just pointing out. And if I wanted to look at the data, there is a data tab to see the actual data. So it looks that this is some of that sample data that when you sign up for an Office 365 account, you can load automatically. And you can see there's Fourth Coffee and VentureWorks and a bunch of different accounts associated with this sample data. So why, again, back to what are some reasons we might want to initiate a flow? Well, typically you want to do, it's one of four main things in my book. When I teach a database management system, I say there's four things we're really concerned about when working with data: create, read, update, delete. And an easy way to remember those four main operations is think of CRUD. You know, what CRUD do I have to do today? So create, right? And if you're a SQL guy like I am, that's the insert statement in T-SQL. Update is update, delete is delete, and then read is select. So that's what we're seeing down here. When we want, you know, when a record gets viewed or selected or read, we can trigger an action, a flow based on that operation. When a record gets first inserted or created, we can trigger a flow from the Common Data Service on that action. What about if a record gets removed? Maybe we want to know, hey, one of the accounts got deleted. Maybe, you know, double check that or something. There's a trigger option for that we can start a flow. Finally, when a record gets updated, and that's one we'll look at in the demo. We're going to demonstrate if someone updated an account, how we could take that information and display it, say, in SharePoint. All right, so demo time. Let's do it. Let's jump out here and bring up flow. So again, I'm going to type in flow.microsoft.com to show you, sort of starting from scratch. And the first thing I want to do is create a new flow. So I'll click on My Flows and I'll say New. Now you got a couple of options, right? It's going to pop up here and say, hey, do you want to use one of those templates that Dave showed us that were pretty cool? Maybe someone did something in Visio. They visually designed a template. That's an option. Then you can do automated flows, which are going to be based on one of those triggers I mentioned. You can do an instant where you just run it. There's scheduled, give it a time. There's a UI flow, which is kind of newish. It's based on a user interface, and then there's business process. We're going to keep it simple. We're going to just do an automated from blank. I'm not going to pick a template. This is not a real complicated demo. Give it a name. We're going to call this account update notification. Right. So what the thought behind this demo is that I want to know whenever an account gets updated in Microsoft Dynamics, someone changes a business name. Maybe I've got some folks who don't have a license to Dynamics, or maybe they don't need one because they don't need to be in Dynamics all day. Maybe it's a CIO, one of those manager types that just wants their finger on the pulse of things, but doesn't want to actually get into the nitty-gritty details. They might want a SharePoint dashboard that just shows them when any accounts have had any changes. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to build a flow that when someone makes a change in Dynamics in the Common Data Service, it's going to then write that record, the fact that it changed to a SharePoint list. Presumably that could be then used into a dashboard or something like that. So we're going to call the flow account update notification. And then what's the trigger for this flow? And notice I mentioned that there's 4 that Common Data Service has, but this is listing all the triggers, right? So you've got some for OneNote, you've got some for OneDrive, Outlook, Teams. I mean, it's a lot. So first thing, I like to approach this from when I first looked at it to try to help you guys avoid mistakes that I've made, is I typed CDS because that's what it was called. And it said no message found. And I said, this is total BS. This doesn't work. That's one of those mad SharePoint problems. I took my laptop, threw it out the window, then I got it back because I need it and I need a job. So it's not CDS, right? It's common. You got to spell it out. Common Data Service. Now you'll start to see some of those triggers that we talked about. Record is deleted, record is updated, record is created, etc. So that was my problem number 1, is make sure I didn't type. And I guess eventually if I type DataFlex, they may change. So watch out for that. So if I type data, it shows up. So just be careful that if you're searching for a certain trigger, you don't give up on the first try. So we want when a record is updated. So I'm going to go ahead and select that from the Common Data Service. I'm going to go ahead and create. And now notice in Flow, it's given me these visual steps to fill out so that I can connect this to the specific environment I'm interested in connecting to, what entity I want to monitor. Is this for the whole organization, the scope, or is it just for a single user or maybe my business group? So the neat thing about this, again, when I show my students this, is that it's very user friendly. It's not code. I'm used to writing a lot of C# code, and sometimes it could be overwhelming, or JavaScript code. This is a very friendly. This is your no code, low code solution. So we'll come in here and we'll fill these things out. Just point and click. We'll say, which environment do I want to? Now, you might be asking yourself, what's an environment, Dave? Well, you didn't mention what you had different environments. You can, we'll talk more about this when I finish the demo, but you can have different environments. You can have production environments, you can have trial environments, you can have development environments. So that's what I'm choosing here. And typically I'm going to work in my development environment until I feel real good about it, and then I'll push it to production. So we don't like to test in production. So I'll use my appropriately named David Patrick's environment. That's my developer environment. So it's got its own set of entities, its own CDS system that won't affect production. Now it's saying, hey, well, which entity do you want to trigger? You said you wanted to trigger off of an entity when it gets updated. There's all the entities that I've loaded in this particular environment. So I'm going to go and pick the accounts entity. The next thing it says, is this for everyone in the organization? Is it just for your business unit, or just you as the user? I'm going to pick the whole organization. So anybody does this flow is going to get triggered. Now I'm going to add another step. And down here is where I want to say, okay, I've got the data. I know which one I'm analyzing or monitoring. I'm monitoring the accounts entity. Now I want to put it somewhere. So all these different connections, right? Outlook, Teams. I want to go and notice there's little filters here, refiners. I can do different, to give me different groupings, but I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to go back to all and just type in SharePoint because I know I wanted to go to SharePoint. So we'll see where SharePoint's at. There it is. There's SharePoint. So I'm going to click on SharePoint, and now I've got the different steps for working with SharePoint. And in this particular instance, I don't want to add an attachment or check in a file. I want to create an item, right? So I'm going to create an item in a list that says the account has been updated. So we'll pick that. And now, just like with the first step, it's saying, Dave, well, what's the site address of the SharePoint site you want to write to? What's the list name? So again, I'm not writing code, I'm just filling things in. Now it does need to know what address, and it is smart enough to look at my current environment and say, hey, these are some of the sites that you have access to. So the one that I want, I'm going to go right to the main site, madsharepoint.com. That's my main team site that I like to play around with. Once I've selected that, I give it a second to go out there and hit the site, make sure it's legit. Then it comes back with some of the lists that are available on that site. So for those of you who aren't big SharePoint folks, let me just take a pause and go around here. So here's my Mad SharePoint site, madshare.sharepoint.com. And if I want to see all the lists that are on here, I can click the gear and say site contents, and that's going to show me all the lists in my site. So you can see down here, I've got a bunch. I've got this bunch of document libraries. I've got some just regular old lists. I've got some task lists and stuff like that. So let's actually create a new one for this account notification that we're going to do. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to add an app, which is funny because I'm adding a list, but we like to call everything apps in SharePoint. So, and we're just going to do a custom list. I don't need anything fancy. All those other ones would give me more metadata than I'm really interested in. We're going to call this accounts updated, and we'll go create that guy. And if I scroll down there, there should be a new list called accounts updated. Should be in alphabetical order, so I shouldn't have to go that far. There it is. And let me do one more thing with that, because right now it just has a title. I'll add one column, which is going to be the account. So it'll actually keep track, and this will just be a single line of text, which is the account name, right? So we want to know not only that the account was updated, but we want to know what account was updated. So we'll go ahead and save that. All right, so created a simple list. This is just so my CIO can go here, and when they hit refresh on this thing, they'll be able to see if any accounts are updated in CDS without having to go into the dynamic CRM system. All right, so back to our flow. There we are. So now I added that new list, so that's not going to be there yet. We're going to have to refresh this sucker. So let's go ahead and save this guy. Oh, look at that. It's telling me my flow checker is that I didn't put the list name in. Yeah, I know. It's just because I'm trying to, but that is, I'm glad that came out. This little flow checker here will warn you if you've got problems in if you've misconfigured something. Or in my example, I didn't actually give it the right list name, or didn't give it any list name. So let's see if that updated. What do we call it? Okay. I did one earlier called updated accounts, but in this case, I'm going to do accounts updated. So let's see if we can, we'll pick one for now just so we can save it. And then when we go back, it should be updated. Go back out of here. No, I don't want to leave just yet. I want to save first. Don't want to make that mistake. Now that we're saving, we'll go back and edit it again. Edit that guy and now see if it shows us. There's the new list. So I just saved the flow, went out of it, went back into it, and now it's showing my new list that I created, accounts updated. All right, so notice what happened there. As I picked the different lists, like assets has a lot more things, a lot more metadata, a lot more columns. So it does all dynamically read the metadata that's available with each list and shows, allows me to fill them in this particular step. But I don't need all that. Again, we want to keep it simple. So we're going just with accounts updated. All right. What are we going to put in this list? We are going to put the account name. So the account name, where is that going to come from? That is going to come from our common data service entity. And these are some of the things that we can choose, right? Remember that we saw this when we looked at the data entities. There was account number, address, account name. We're going to use the account name. That's why I called it account name. So kind of make it similar. It would be pretty easy to figure out what goes to which. So we're doing this little mapping here that this is going to come from the when it's triggered from the common data service. So let's go ahead and save that. Now it's interesting. I think because I messed around with switching the different things. Look at all these errors. I'm glad this is happening. Purchase price isn't in the scheme. A current value isn't. Yeah, this is just again because I switched the different list names. So let's go ahead and close this. Again, save this guy. Go back out here. Back into it. Oops. Oh, it didn't save my change there. Okay, let me do that. Save that. I don't know why it's pulling up category and condition. That's interesting. Let's see if we can save it like that. All right, so obviously the account's updated. Something's wrong where it thinks it's got these additional fields. What I'll do, I could go and delete it and recreate it, but just because of time, I'm going to use the one I did earlier. See if that works for me. All righty. So let's come out of that for a second and show you the one I did earlier. I'll show you what that looks like. So this is what it should have looked like. There's my list. There's the title, which is required. You saw that when the flow checker was crying, it was saying that title was required. And indeed it is. Now I could go to SharePoint and mark it as unrequired. That is a little trick that you can do, but we're not going to mess around with that. We'll just put some text in there. It's something like account was updated. And then again, under account name, we're choosing from the dynamic content one of the fields from the account entity, in this case, the account name entity. So now does this look good? Did we get a flow check? That looks right. Yay, no errors there. So we look like we're doing good there. So we save that flow, back out of it, and now we can do things like test it, right? And so let's go back into, let's see, we'll do a couple different ways we can test it. One is you can, while you're editing it, I should have mentioned this too, is you can say, hey, let's just test it right from here. So you're going to test it, And you can either, if it's run previously, you can use data from a previous run. If you want to do the trigger action yourself, you can actually say, all right, put it in, publish it, make it available. I'm going to test it. So that's what we'll do here. And then we have to go out and actually trigger. So we have to update an account in order for this flow to fire. So we'll go out to our Power Apps under the data entities, and let's update one of these accounts. And there's a couple different ways you can do that. So the first way we'll do it is editing it right inside the browser. And what that's going to do is that's going to open it up inside of Dynamics. So luckily I have a license to all that. I can come in here and we'll see, this is AdventureWorks for real. So let's change that to just AdventureWorks, 2020. How about that? So we'll save that. That should be enough to trigger that flow. Let's go back to our flow. And see if there was a recent run. So, yep, there's a run. There's a couple of runs from an hour ago. Wait a minute, let's refresh that. Make sure I'm looking at the right one. You can see this is when they run, when they succeed, this is what you're going to see. So let's click on one of these flow results. And if they run successfully, you'll see your flow ran successfully. That's what we get up here in the corner. And then you'll get the details of each run. So you can see here that these were the inputs. It came from the account entity. When I ran this one, it looks like account number ABC 28UU7 got changed. Yeah, so I was playing with AdventureWorks for real, and then it got written to SharePoint. And if I click on that, now you don't need to know, some of this. This is the JSON, the JavaScript object notation that represents our data. But sometimes if something's gone wrong, I've done flows in the past where I expected title to have data and it was blank. And by going in here, I could see, oh, hey, the title is blank. Why is the title blank? And I had mapped the wrong entity or something like that. But because this all ran successfully, it looks like everything's filled in as expected. Now, what about in SharePoint? So let's jump over to SharePoint and see the resultant message. So we switched from accounts updated to the updated accounts list. Let's go take a look at that. Go back to my site contents. And we're looking for the list called updated accounts. Where did I put that guy? It's a list. There it is. Updated accounts. And look at that. There's the one I did earlier. There's another one I did earlier, and there's the one we just did. The account was updated, AdventureWorks 2020. So again, the idea is that someone was in CRM. They made a change to an account, but someone who doesn't have a license to CRM can be in SharePoint and view some of the things that went on simply because we created a flow that was triggered from a CDS change. And it's simple. It's a simple idea, but really, really powerful stuff. You can do a lot with this. So we're just talking about one small example, but I've built dashboards where people were using Dynamics, but Dynamics is expensive. But SharePoint, if I could pull the data out and do a dashboard in SharePoint, it's very easy and inexpensive for me to do that. So this is the basis of something like that. All right. Oh, let's see. What else do we want to show you while we're in here? People ask me, hey, Dave, this is great, but can I, if you've created this flow, how do I reuse it? How can I share it with other people? How can I, save it and wrap my arms around it? So there is an export function in Flow that you can utilize to save your flow, not just in the cloud, but if you want to take it and put it in your pocket and run away with it, export's there for you. So here's our updated accounts. Let's go ahead and do an export. And you've got a couple different options. You can do it in JSON. You can do it as a zip. We'll do it as a zip. And this is great if I'm in my developer environment, but what if I wanted to switch to my production environment? This is one way, or another tenant altogether. This is one way I could do that. So let's go ahead and here, we'll give it a name. We'll call this the accounts update to SharePoint. Which environment it came through. I could put some more descriptive information in here if I wanted to. And then we're going to, oh, before we export it, then it has these options, right? So it knows that there's a flow in there. When they import it, are we going to make them update the name? Or are we going to, you know, what they're going to have to do something, right? So we can say, hey, when someone imports it, it's definitely going to be, we're going to prompt them for a name. They'll have to give us a new name, or maybe it already exists and we're just going to update an existing one. So we have to choose, you know, when we export this, what we want to happen on an import. Same thing down here. There's a couple connections to find in this flow. So we had one to SharePoint and one to the common data service. When someone does an import, what are they going to do? Are we going to make them to choose it during the import? It looks like that's the only option they get on this one. So nothing changed there. So we like what we have so far. We're going to go ahead and export it with those options. So it takes a second to build the zip. There it is. It built the zip. I've got mine set to automatically download. It actually has opened up the zip file, and now you can see in there what the zip file is made of. It's got some JSON, which is the manifest. It's got the Microsoft Flow folder, and inside that, all the information that was used to build the flow. So now what can I do with that zip file? I can go to another environment and import it. So let's pretend I'm in another environment. I click on My Flows again, and someone said, hey, Dave, here's an updated account notification flow. Can you please bring this in and use it? I can say, yep. Let me go ahead and click Import. And it's going to say, hey, do you have a package to upload? And I'll say, yes, I do. Let's go ahead and click Upload. Go to my downloads and find the package. There it is. Open that guy up. And now it's uploading the flow that I just exported as a zip file. Now you're going to see it's going to prompt me for some of those steps. When we exported it and said, hey, we're going to leave these steps up to someone when they import it, now it's going to prompt me for those steps. So here it is. It's saying, hey, you're trying to import this package. What do you want to do? Are you going to update an existing one, or are you going to create as new? So here I can make those choices. You know, I can create as new. If I create as new, I got to give you a new name. Or if I update an existing one, it's just going to update one that's already called updated accounts. We'll create this as new. And then down here, what are the connections? So I do have to choose those. And notice import's grayed out. It's not going to let me import it until I've figured out where this thing's going to connect to. So let's go ahead and do that. And we'll say the first one is going to go ahead and connect to Manage SharePoint. That sounds good. I only have one connection to choose. Same thing down here. All right, now that I've chosen how I'm going to create the flow with a new name and chosen the different connections that it's required, I can go import is now enabled. I can import it, and it's going to register that zip file up into my environment as a new flow. Takes a second to bring everything together, make sure everything's right, provision it properly. Maybe 2 seconds. I said it takes a second, maybe it takes 3 seconds. There we go. So there's our new imported flow. Everything was successful. That's always nice. Scroll down and see the different results that we chose. And now if I go to my flows, I've got ones that I did earlier that I've turned off. I've got this guy. So this one I don't need anymore. So let's actually turn that one off, because it would be 2 triggers, on the same action to the same table. We'd have double records. We don't want that. So we only want one active. So there's our updated accounts. And let's go back. And again, if I go into that, you can see I had some. This was the existing one because we already had some flows around it. Refresh that and see. Okay, great. If I shared a flow with someone else, I could actually have team flows, and you actually have to, that's a premium edition, so we have to do that. Same thing with the business process and UI flows. Alrighty, one other thing I want to show you, which I alluded to before, was back in CDS, where we made our edit. We used it, we did it right from the browser. It opened up Dynamics and made that change. But what if I want to use Excel? Because a lot of people love Excel. Excel is great. People know it's been around forever. So what another way, option for editing the data is I could have said, hey, I want to edit the data in Excel. So that's going to open up an Excel document that's automatically connected to the CDS account entity that I'm on. So let's go ahead and open that guy up. And it's also going to activate a control, an add-in in Excel that's going to, again, allow me to push my changes back to CDS. So it got to be secure. You know, when it opens it, it says, hey, do you trust this file? If you do trust it, then I can enable editing, and that's going to activate that add-in. So I trust it. I'm going to say enable editing, and look what happens. It brings up the file. It opens up the Microsoft Power Apps Office add-in that's connecting to CDS. It's pulling down the data, pulling down the metadata. And now I've got a live connection. This always trips people out. Sometimes people think of Excel as a read-only. You know, you pull data down and you don't really write back. But this is read-write. I can do all my CRUD here. So I can come in here and I can change this one from fourth coffee to just, you know, just remove sample and put, you know, tastes great, less filling type of thing, right? Let me do another one. So now that I've made those changes, I can publish those changes using my add-in inside of Excel, and it pushed them right back to the CDS. What? You don't believe me? Let's go find out. So we'll jump back over to CDS. And what did we change? We changed the coffee, and we changed something down here. So let's do a refresh. And look at that. Now our fourth coffee says tastes great. And I changed, there we are down here. This one says less filling. So just by using Excel, I'm able to make those changes. And I got the Excel data from here, but now I can go take it and, you know, I don't have to do it every time from here now that I've got the Excel sheet downloaded on my machine. So I thought that was a really cool way for, you know, not requiring CRM to go in and make changes, but there's other ways to do it. One last thing I want to show you, I kind of alluded to this before in the slides, is you can also create your own entities. So I could come in here and I said, you know what, I want to create my own entity. I want to create, maybe I'm going to keep track of pets. And actually, I want to follow their naming convention, right? They're not using plural names for their entities. When I do database design, it seems like it's 50-50. Some people like to name their entities plural. Some people like to go singular. In this, we're doing singular entity names, so call mine pet. Oh, there, but it does figure out the plural display name. Nice. What's this? You know, this is probably the pet name. We could choose whether we want this to be a complex entity and allow attachments. There's some other settings down here, but we'll keep it real simple and just do the pet. And since I only gave it one field, it's obviously going to be the primary field. But I could come in here and I could do other things, you know. I could define relationships. Maybe, you know, each customer can have one or more pets, one-to-many relationship. I can find, you know, foreign keys if it is related to other entities. I can add other fields. You know, if later I come back and say, oh, it's got an age. You could put age in there. Now, we mentioned metadata before and all this rich metadata. Age shouldn't be text, right? What age should be? Age should be a number. In fact, what I probably should do, I'm being silly here by doing number, I should probably do date of birth, which is a date. And then age should be calculated. That'd be a more proper, but I'm just going to do this. So we'll go ahead and add that guy. So yeah. It's really easy to go in here into your entities and add different fields. Again, it becomes part of the environment. So all your entities, let's go ahead and save this. And you can see there's a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't even touch on, dashboards and charts and other stuff. But back to the data, you know, if I want to start editing the data, just like I did with my accounts, I can use Excel to come in here and start putting all my pets in. So if I have, I actually do have a lot of pets. There's Joey the cat, the evil cat. There's there's Raj the sweet dog. So let me just add a few real quick. Joey. Oh, I got to enable editing. There's Joey. Yeah, I'm too fast for it. It's still, there we go. Now there's Joey, and it looks like I can even do an owner. And then we'll do Earl. Now I should have added a pet type because this is a cat, a dog, and a hamster, but we'll just do that much right there. So let's go publish that. Did it go real fast? I think it did, but you get the idea. You can, let me close those guys. You can add your own custom. So I'm going too fast, but you can add your own custom entities to the standard entities. So there's, and it looks like, and you can, when you load other people's modules, like in CRM, you might find, looks like activity was a custom entity that was added by someone else. But yeah, there's my pet one. Notice the template name makes it stand out. All right. So just to recap, we showed you how to create a new flow. We looked at entities inside of CDS, aka DataFlex Pro. We added a new record. We ran the flow. We saw the results in SharePoint. We looked at the flow and saw some of the JSON that showed us the results. We showed you how to export a flow, import the flow, custom entity, and then update entity data using Excel. It's a lot in just a little bit of time. Sorry about that, guys. Some notes about the trial environment. So a couple different environments you can create. You can have trial environments. They're great. There's two different types. There's a 30-day one that'll just go away. Then there's a one that's based on subscription. Both of those you can convert to production. There's also the Power Apps community plan, which is great, free environment. Again, I mentioned I'm pretty frugal for individual use, so you can sign up. And if you just want to learn Power Apps and play around with Flow, you can do the Power Apps community plan to try things out. This talks about some of the things that are included, but everything that you need to do what I just showed you, including the premium connectors. I thought that was pretty cool. They give you, again, not for production, but just for learning. A great resource from Microsoft. This is the example. If you go into Dynamics 365 Administration Center, you can view, if you're an admin, if you're a global admin, you can go in and see some of the different types of productions or environments. So here's one that's production. That's what people are using for real. Then it looks like Jeff Hay had a developer environment and somebody else signed up for a trial environment. What I did in my demo today was a developer environment. And this just shows you, if you want to go into the new environments, the different kind of environments that you can create in your Power Apps. Some tips and tricks. I pointed out the whole missing CDS, so make sure you don't just type CDS and look for those connectors. You have to type out the word common. Use your flow checker. We ran into that where we had some errors, so the flow checker is great. And watch out for if you have any shared flows. Sometimes I'll be looking at my flows and I'll say, why can't I see a certain flow? It's because someone shared it and it's not under my flows anymore, but it's under the team flow. And again, that's premium, so you only run into that if you guys are using the premium CDS. Oh, what else? This is showing us the automated flow. Again, just recapping what we went into, where we went into accounts, announce new accounts, and again, making sure that you type in that common data and not just trying to type CDS. Another thing to watch out for, I didn't show you this because I had already created my environments, but if you're doing this brand new, you're not going to have an environment. When you first sign up, it's going to be empty. So you will have to create, there's a step where you say create new environment. You can pick your different plans. I mentioned the Power Apps community plan. It walks you through. It didn't ask me for a credit card, which is really exciting. And then after you create your environment, you have to create your database. So there's a couple of steps that I didn't show you during the demo because I had already done them. But when you first sign up, you will have to create your environment. You have to pick what kind of environment you want to create, and you'll have to create a database which will represent your common data service database. So watch out for those things when you're first getting started. And when you first create your database, it says, what currencies are going to be based on, what languages are going to be based on. And what I recommend highly is to include the sample data, because then you're not staring at a blank screen or blank slate. You'll have actual data like accounts and things like that you can play with. And that's an example of what we did there. Oh, something I included this the first time I did it because something went wrong. And I was like, wait a minute, what went wrong? What did go wrong in that one? I think I did the classic solution, which was just to try it again, and then it worked. So don't be put off if the first time you do it. I think what happened was I was just too quick. I did during my demo. I don't know if you noticed, but I kind of paused for a second to give everything in the cloud. You got to give it a second to provision. That if you try to do things too soon, you might run into something like to the very helpful something went wrong error message. So you tried it again, and then I got my account information. Here's the link, and I'll put my slides up later so you guys, all the links are embedded into the slides if you want to join the Office 365 developer program. From this, again, no credit card. You get a 5-user tenant that is great for developing and testing and playing around in. That's what I was using earlier. My Mad SharePoint site was based on Office 365 developer program tenant, and it works just great. And I've had this for years. As long as you use it, Microsoft will renew it every 90 days. They send me an email and says, that's what you see down here, that it says it's renewable, but I don't have to do anything. I just have to use it. As long as I'm using it, hey, you've been renewed. So they want you to use it for learning. That's it. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. If you have any questions, we'll take a look at the Q&A and see if there's anything I can answer. Again, follow me on Twitter. Check out my website, Mad SharePoint. Check out my user group. Again, thanks to the sponsors, Soho Dragon, Tri-State Office 365 user group, and the tech platform. And make sure you fill out your forms, your speaker feedback, and your event feedback. Are there any questions out there for me?
There is one. The question is, and I'm going to paraphrase this one a little bit. What data type options do you have for primary fields, and can we have multiple primary fields?
Good question. So I haven't. It's a great question. I've done primary fields against text fields. I've done them against numeric fields. I think some data types obviously aren't going to work for primary. Primary field means it's unique, so you're not going to choose a Boolean, a true false. It's just two values. So I want to say, and unfortunately, I haven't tried to break it and tried like some crazy ones like float or anything like that. Typically, I use either numbers or text for my primary keys. Now, the second question is, can you have multiple primary keys? And I think there's two answers. One is you certainly, if I have account name and make that primary, and then I have account number and try to make that primary, it's not going to let me choose two separate fields both as primary. However, that's the idea behind a primary field. It's the one unique identifier. However, you can have composite primary key. So you can take the account name and the account number and together make them a primary field. I'm not a big fan of composite primary fields. I think they complicate things. I actually recommend my students don't do that. I think it's nice to just have a single primary field, but that's an option. So great question. Anything else?
Not yet, but it takes usually about 10 seconds before we start seeing questions.
Well, if anyone thinks of questions, and you don't get them in, hit me up on Twitter. I love the public questions, and I'll if you tweet me or you can DM, my DMs are open, so DM me a question. I'd be happy to answer them. You can go to my madsharepoint.com website. That's my blog where I put up all my slides, and sometimes I'll put up little tips and tricks there if I run into something particularly heinous in SharePoint, like the hidden taxonomy field list. A lot of times we'll put some information up there about that so that it can help out. So feel free, if you didn't get a chance to ask your question now, there was a lot of information I threw at you. You think of it later, go to Twitter, go to my blog, and hit me up.
All right. Great. Thanks a lot. Still no questions so far, so
everyone's dazed and confused. It was rapid fire, and hopefully and the heat's not getting to everyone too much, but I appreciate the opportunity. Again, everyone out there, make sure you fill out that speaker feedback and event feedback, and tell us how great a job we're doing, or if you didn't like us, well, you don't have to fill anything out then.
Great. All right, thanks a lot, and we'll see you at the next event, I'm sure.
Awesome. Great. Thanks again. Take care, everyone. Stay safe. Stay cold.